video was inspired by the fact that I thought Birds of Prey was always a dumb title for what was essentially a Harley Quinn movie. This doesn't mean they couldn't have had other DC heroines participate in the film, but it was clearly not a Birds of Prey film. Like, every single trailer made that clear. And some people have argued with me that the Birds of Prey get plenty of time in the film. No, they don't. Literally, Harley walks around in the middle of the film with a shirt with her name printed on it because this was a vanity piece. Honestly, the title was confusing. Only comic book fans know what Birds of Prey is, and they weren't happy about a lot of the changes. And other regular people, even if they kind of remembered Harley Quinn from the Suicide Squad film, didn't really get how Birds of Prey connected to Harley Quinn. And so, the title is just a bad idea for multiple reasons. I personally think comic fans were completely justified in criticizing the title of the film as it not matching the concept. I mean, do you see any resemblance between this and this? On the other hand, how about this and this? But let's not just judge these books by its cover. Let's get into this. On a concept-to-concept basis and a character-to-character basis, including comparing the Harleys, which is Mia Sara and Margot Robbie. So before I go forward, I'm going to acknowledge there's a bit of unfairness in this comparison. Just like a comic book is different from a movie, a TV show is different from a movie. And the TV show had 13 episodes in which to build characters, whereas the movie had less than 2 hours. And in that less than 2 hours, they spent very little of that time on the actual Birds of Prey, despite the initial title of the film. Also, the Birds of Prey movie with Harley Quinn is a bit of a kind of origin story for the Birds of Prey. Like, it's kind of snuck in there with Harley Quinn's emancipation, whereas the Birds of Prey TV show was very much in the police procedural model of there was a villain who came in every week, they fought said villain, you know, they usually won, and then there was also this underlying sort of threat that was building the whole season that anybody with half a brain could figure out, because really they didn't hide the fact that their Harleen Quinzel was Harley Quinn, and they weren't trying to be clever, so this wasn't really a criticism of the series. The series was acknowledging that at this point Harley Quinn is still having two identities, and very much a lot of the theme of the show was dealing with two identities and sort of how they end up merging towards the end of the series. But its baseline was as a police procedural, whereas Harley Quinn Birds of Prey, or Birds of Prey and the Emancipation of, well, you know, that was more like, we're going to do a Harley Quinn movie and sneak in introducing these characters. But I think they should have saved the title Birds of Prey for the moment when they were doing that. So let's move on to characters. I'm not going to be talking about the grand sin that was the Cassandra Cain interpretation for the Birds of Prey movie, because, like, that was just off, wrong, and nowhere near who Cassandra Cain is, and you could write a whole novel on all the things they got wrong with that. Montoya, on the other hand, has her place in this discussion, but we're going to go from the closest one-to-one change in the Birds of Prey lineup to the most confusing one, and then we're going to talk about Harley. The problem is, of course, there is no real one-to-one between the two, except, ironically, Harley Quinn. Harley Quinn is pretty much Harley Quinn without much debate between both the CW series and the movie. However, when it comes to Huntress, the CW has Helena Kyle. I'm not talking about the Arrowverse right now, I can hear you already yelling in the comments. And the Harley Quinn movie had Helena Bertinelli. The CW had a psychic named Dinah Redmond, and the Harley Quinn movie had a singer named Diana Lance. The CW had Barbara Gordon, the former Batgirl, now the Oracle, and the Harley Quinn movie had Montoya. Even though these are two superheroes who both use the moniker the Huntress, the fact is they're based on actually two different characters who have the same first name, different last names, different parents, and different backgrounds. Now let's talk about the CW. Well, the thing is, I think, and this is just theory, that the CW still wanted a legitimate claim to the Bat Throne, which they couldn't do with Helena Bertinelli. So they swapped out Helena Bertinelli for Earth 2's Helena Wayne, and it's this character that Helena Kyle is based. So let's flip to Harley Quinn Birds of Prey. It's actually using Helena Bertinelli. It also actually uses Helena's weapon, a crossbow. Both the Wayne and Bertinelli versions of Huntress carry a crossbow. It's really only the Ashley Scott version that rejects all weapons because...
Why don't you carry any weapons?
I am the weapon.
Basically, the Helena in the CW show was a metahuman. If you look closely at the design of her mother's outfit in the opening sequence, it resembles the Batman Returns Catwoman, who is theorized to be a metahuman, either changed or triggered by the traumatic events of that film. In fact, test footage for the series used clips from Batman Returns. There were early theories that they were in the same universe. That doesn't quite work out for reasons that I won't get into this video. One of the most frustrating things about the show, actually, is Helena declaring she's half metahuman, which, I'm sorry, as much as I love this show, is dumb. You have the powers, Helena. You're either a metahuman or you're not a metahuman. There is no half. But not the point. Back on track, Dawn. Fact is, the Birds of Prey TV series just dumped weapons and wearing a mask when it came to Huntress. The Birds of Prey film keeps the weapons intact, but she's also not wearing a mask in the movie. But again, this is pre-superhero. It's an origin story. She hasn't decided to be a crime-fighting hero yet. In personality, the two are very different. Winstead's Huntress is socially awkward despite being an impeccable fighter.
And I love that fucking name, Huntress.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, great name. Wow. I really like how you were able to kick so high in those tight pants.
The implication being she was so focused on her training so that she could get revenge that she kind of missed everything about how normal human interaction works. Ashley Scott, on the other hand, is your usual cocky, don't need nobody superhero loner. While she works with Oracle, the separation between the two, Oracle in the tower and Helena on the streets, meant she had a different set of social issues, not letting anyone get too close. This is being a reaction to losing her mom. So basically, Harley Quinn Birds of Prey kind of kept the Helena Bertinelli backstory, made a couple of snips, changes, and adjustments, and she's not in the movie that much, so it really doesn't matter. Helena Wayne's backstory is Batman and Catwoman had a kid, and that kid became a hero in her own right. And that is kind of what they did with Helena Kyle, with, again, a few snips and adjustments. Really, both the TV show and the movie cut the origin stories up a little bit to suit their purposes. Both ignore coming even close to the comic book costume. Both are honestly fun characters. I love watching Ashley Scott. Like, I rewatched all of Birds of Prey for this and had a blast. On the same note, I honestly kind of like what they did with Helena in the Birds of Prey movie, and she has this singular vision to take down the people who killed her family. In pursuit of that goal, she lost touch with some of those skills we learned interacting with humans. If I honestly had to say who did it better, it's a draw. Despite my many criticisms of the show, Ashley Scott's performance isn't one of them. And the clever way Winstead handled the social awkwardness of her Huntress in the movie also worked for me. So time to move on to another complex parallel, the Dinos. And we're going to call them the Dinos and not the Black Canaries, mostly because, once again, we're dealing with a messy one-to-one, as Dinah Redmond of the TV series never took on an official hero moniker, and Dinah Lance is actually Black Canary, but there also was a Black Canary in the Birds of Prey TV series, but she was only in one episode, and it's weird, and so we'll talk about it by getting into Miss Redmond first. Dinah Redmond was played by Rachel Skarsten. She has the look. She could be Black Canary easily in the right costume, but the superpowers they gave her happen to be that she's a psychic. So there was no canary cry. It was an early criticism of the TV show. She later on develops telekinesis, and she has zero fight skills. By comparison, the movie got way closer in way more ways. The only real big criticism is that visually they've race swapped her out. Again, we're dealing with her pre-superhero, so the fact that she is not dressed like Black Canary as Black Canary completely makes sense. Also, Journey is biracial, and we know her mother also had powers. It's completely possible she's the daughter of a Black Canary that's a blonde woman who looks more like the traditional Black Canary, and that Black Canary's husband or boyfriend happened to be a black guy. There, I fixed it for you. Now let's move on to things that matter. So early on, the response to the criticism of the change in Dinah's powers was that they never said she was Black Canary. And later in the series, we find out her last name is Redmond. For all intents and purposes, Dinah Redmond, minus the name, is almost a complete invention for the Birds of Prey TV show. However, the foster child, Dinah Redmond, is later discovered to have been born Dinah Lance. She was abandoned to a family called the Redmonds at age 6, and you know what, I'll let Carolyn Lance tell the story. Who is Carolyn Lance, you say? Why, it's the CW's answer at the time to the Black Canary complaint.
You're the Black Canary's daughter? You have a daughter?
She's the Black Canary?
This could mean you have the Canary Cry as well.
Hold on. She has mind melding, telekinesis, and the Canary Cry? What Canary Cry?
What telekinesis?
Okay, everybody stop.
Despite Huntress's worry that Dinah might power up and be a little more powerful than her, by the end of the series, Dinah Redmond / Lance seemed to be confined to just her ability to read minds and telekinesis. In the Harley Quinn Birds of Prey movie, Dinah is also the child of a pre-existing metahuman. If her mother ever went by the Black Canary moniker is unknown, but it's entirely possible the Dinah we meet in the movie is taking on the name her mother once used. While the whole, Dinah is the daughter of a previous hero, good guy person is a part of her comics history, inherited metahuman abilities haven't always been a thing for Dinah. In the first draft of the Black Canary story, Dinah Drake had a daughter named Dinah Laurel Lance, and Dinah Jr. was the only one with the cursed power of the Canary Cry. Her mother had just been a well-trained fighter like a Batman or an Arrow. In the Birds of Prey TV series, despite the later retcon and inclusion of Carolyn Lance's Black Canary, it really didn't hurt them to not introduce a Black Canary that could fight alongside the Huntress. The show was substantially weaker due to a depowered Dinah, and it really wasn't Rachel Skarsten's fault. They didn't give her character much to do. And the depowering I'm talking about is not just the lack of a Canary Cry, it's the lack of fighting ability. So she had an inactive power that was really useful in the pilot, but not really useful along the way, and then no kind of power that really aided her with fighting, until she got the telekinesis, which they added midway through the series. But it was almost as if they couldn't conceive in the beginning of two equal female fighters taking down crime. They needed a star, and they tried to make Ashley Scott the star. Barbara was the brains, Huntress was the brawn, and Dinah was our window in, but it kind of didn't work as well as they wanted it to. And I say this with all the love in the world to Rachel Skarsten, who I loved watching on screen. Like I said, I have a weakness for this show, and this is nothing against anything Rachel did with what she had. But the show wanted to sell itself with its Bat Princess, Huntress, daughter of Batman. There wasn't much for Dinah to do, except be this eager, hang-on teenager.
Well, we need to find out who the assassin is. Stop him for good.
Which means check the dockyards. It's the only lead we have.
I can go to the dockyards. You can't be in two places at once.
Okay, so you take the dockyards and I'll guard Ketterly.
I could go to the dockyards. Well, I don't like you going to the field without backup.
You mean without looking over my shoulder?
Let me go to the damn dockyards!
Just before the show's cancellation, they were finally throwing her into the fight. In the finale, you see Dinah kind of throwing this blue burst of energy out of her hands. I guess it's an advancement of her telekinesis. But as it stands, 90% of the series has Dinah still figuring out her punches and kicks in between being invisible and useless. She's more a liability to Huntress than a helping hand. Harley Quinn Birds of Prey has a very powered Black Canary, and I'm not just talking about her Canary Cry. Early into meeting her in the film, Canary saves Harley from some sleazy guys outside the club. There's a question of how exactly she learned how to fight, but I honestly don't consider that a big deal. I've heard some people make this a criticism of the film, but I think it's perfectly acceptable that we find out later. There's a lot of ways to learn to fight. If the character continues forward, we can get some of that background. It's also worth mentioning that the Canary in the comics, she's in a rock band. So I hope they pick up this thread from the character in future films. I mean, Journey looked absolutely incredible as a nightclub singer, like breathtaking. I had a soft spot for Dinah on the TV series, but she was mostly useless in the story. Journey's Black Canary just has a lot of potential in every way that matters. She could be a great live-action Canary with a costume design more befitting the character. But back to the point, who did it better? Birds of Prey TV series or the movie? And the fact is, there really is no contest. The movie did it better. I mean, really, the only points that Rachel Skarsten gets is that she's a blonde white woman. Whereas like everything else that's kind of cool about the character, if there's anything we can say that's kind of cool, it's kind of in there in the journey interpretation of the character. So now we're to the most problematic one-to-one, and that's because I don't even know what to call this. The mentor, the third member. I can't even call it the person in the chair because Montoya's kind of not in the chair. Let's just call it the third member. And let's face it, the Birds of Prey show is just literally right. The show is just on the nose perfect with absolutely incredible casting. Dinah Meyer was a great Barbara Gordon and a great Oracle, and the TV shows changed very little that was essential to the character. I mean, they also actually used Barbara Gordon, which the movie did not. Not to mention, it was an amazing portrayal of someone who doesn't let her wheelchair limit her. There isn't anything to complain about here. She has like a full life, a job, a dating life, and her night gig, which she hides from her beau's boyfriend, Wade. When Wade is initially interested in dating her, I like that the reluctance to date him is far more about the crime fighting than worrying about the wheelchair. And that's not to say the wheelchair is never a very realistic issue, it just comes up when it's relevant. Then we get to the Birds of Prey movie, which had Renee Montoya. Maybe you can tell how I feel about this. First of all, no offense to Rosie Perez, but the character just didn't fit. Her going blow for blow with Harley didn't fit. Her being the third founding member of the Birds of Prey doesn't fit. It plain old just doesn't work. But let's discuss Montoya in the comics anyway. And Montoya is from the comics. But she's also from Batman the Animated Series. In fact, she was developed for the series and then ended up getting imparted in the comics. Ironically, not much different from Harley Quinn. Everything is pretty accurate on a very base level, but there's not a lot here. She's a Gotham City cop. She's been in a Birds of Prey comic maybe once, but she's never really been a member of the team. The TV series just flat out gets all the points here. Barbara Gordon was literally the best part of that series. There's no debate here. So where does that leave us in this whole Birds of Prey versus Birds of Prey debate? Well, it leaves us at a draw for Huntress, points to the movie for a Dinah that's actually the Black Canary with proper powers, and an undisputed win with Barbara in the TV series camp. So that brings us to Harley Quinn. The biggest difference here is that Mia Sara is an older Harley. And while clearly the Mia Sara version is also void of things like tattoos, they have basically the same background. They both were a psychiatrist, Dr. Harleen Francis Quinzel, PhD. They both met the Joker while he was locked up, and they both were seduced by him and became his girlfriend. But this is where Mia Sara's Quinn is different from Margot Robbie's Quinn. In the Birds of Prey TV series, Batman and Joker are basically myths to the general public.
Okay, so what you're telling me is there's this whole secret subculture right underneath our noses. Come on, man. How is that possible?
A generation ago, there was a man, a vigilante who prowled New Gotham's nights claiming he was fighting for justice. All the while, and I'm not kidding about this, he was dressed as a bat.
Okay. Now I know you're messing with me. A grown man fights crime, and he does it dressed as a giant flying rodent.
I think it's safe to assume he had some issues.
So Mia Sara's Harley has somehow retained a double agent life even after falling in love with the Joker, whereas Robbie's Harley basically threw her entire old life away for the Joker. Margot Robbie's Quinn is arguably more accurate after the point of freeing Joker to becoming his girlfriend. Harley has become more of an anti-hero in the comics than pure villain, and I don't think Mia Sara's Quinn is anything but absolutely psychotic, cold, and cruel.
Few more adjustments.
Done. Every television in New Gotham is receiving my signal. Go, Gibson! Everyone watching will go mad. Ranting, writhing, stark, raving, full metal jacket, nuts! Steve will be on his knees. I need a drink.
That being said, Mia Sara's Quinn was created in a world where Harley was a villain, just pure villain, and didn't quite have the popularity with young girls that she has today as an anti-hero. It completely fit the world in which she was created. I'm not the biggest fan of Margot Robbie's Harley. I never have been. But I don't really mind the anti-hero Harley they're trying to create with her. Besides, the last thing they want to be accused of is marketing a psycho to little girls. What I did find frustrating about the film is how Harley was selectively dumbed down. I have no issue with her unhinged quirkiness. That's a part of Harley. But I found thrown off by a scene where she suddenly couldn't spell and was sprawling words on a business card like a 2-year-old who had just learned how to write. She has a PhD, something she reminds us of in the film. And while it doesn't mean you can't misspell a word on occasion, the interesting part about Harley, despite all her quirkiness, is she isn't a stupid character.
But it's still your plan, see? Everything just like you said. Except I hung the guy upside down so he'd see their little frowns as little smiles. Now it all works.
Except you have to explain it to me. If you have to explain a joke, there is no joke.
Even in Suicide Squad, you can see she has skills of manipulation. Everything she's doing while caged is meant to distract the guards into a false sense of security. Her sexuality is a weapon that she's happened to wield, and she's cleverly planning her escape from the Suicide Squad despite the high risks. You might argue it was Joker's plan, but as zany as she behaves, she very clearly plays up to stupid and unhinged until everything falls into place and she can dash out of there. I have no issues with the moments Harley is weird. I have a lot of issues with the idea she's selectively stupid. I don't think either portrayal is inherently wrong in any way. If I had to say who did it better, Robbie only has a slight edge because she fits who Harley is in 2020, and the character has evolved a lot, some of it in reaction to Robbie becoming a fan favorite. Considering where we were in the early 2000s, and the info the series had to shape the Harley that Mia Sara portrayed, who was supposed to be the villain of the series, which she was, it's more of a draw. So in this battle of Birds of Prey versus Birds of Prey, we add another draw to the pile. Honestly, leaving the table pretty balanced. 1 point to the movie for Canary, another point to the TV show for Barbara Gordon, while Huntress and Harley fit their respective universes as much as can be expected. So what's the tiebreaker? It's the world. While I think the Harley Quinn movie got some individual characters right, I still think the TV show got Birds of Prey more right as a world. It had some stuff to work out, like balancing out the crime fighting between Dinah and Huntress. It also needed to get over its metahuman fixation, like crimes and crime fighting can happen without a metahuman element in it. Which they did a couple of times, but not nearly enough. They were obsessed with throwing the metahuman element into the show, which is clear in the fact that they invented Helena Kyle as sort of an amalgamation between Helena Wayne from Earth 2 and the Batman Returns universe. But in the show, Gotham felt like Gotham, aesthetically. The Gotham in the Harley Quinn movie feels in service to Harley Quinn. It feels like a spiritual successor to Suicide Squad, but then you have to remind yourself, it's also kind of in the same world as Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, and Justice League, and it doesn't feel or look like it. It feels like a Gotham invented for Harley Quinn, which gets into a bigger problem with the film. The fact that it was ever called Birds of Prey anything. Not after a colon after Harley's name, not in the beginning and middle, anywhere. It makes no sense that this movie was called Birds of Prey at all. It barely feels like it's taking place in Gotham, and it doesn't feel like it had any intent to do Birds of Prey. The one thing I can say about the TV series is it felt like it was trying to do Birds of Prey. It made some questionable changes, used some weird comic book amalgamation history, but it was clearly doing Birds of Prey. That being said, on an individual basis, I like Canary and Huntress in the Harley Quinn movie. In fact, I like them more than Harley Quinn. I would love to see where they go with those two, but I really need them to find a way to fix Birds of Prey first. I still think it would have been better, in the end, to leave Birds of Prey out of it. They easily could have done this film the exact same way, using the exact same heroines, except Cassandra Cain. They should have named that kid something else and not Cassandra Cain. But they could have had Canary and Huntress in the movie and have them find their superhero paths at the end. And you could even have Montoya there and Montoya decide to quit the force. But they just didn't have to be the Birds of Prey at the end. There was no value in that, and it probably hurt the movie more than helped it.